Rescue efforts continue in Turkey following a strong earthquake in the Aegean Sea. Some 20 buildings collapsed in the city of Izmir. At least 27 people have been killed and hundreds injured across the region. A third man arrested in connection with Thursday's attack on a church in Nice. The suspect, a Tunisian migrant who arrived in Europe a month ago, is believed to have met with two men on the eve of the attack. And a tense election in Ivory Coast, where incumbent Alassane Ouattara is seeking a controversial third term. At least 30 people died in clashes in the run-up to the vote. In this programme, our correspondent Sam Bradpeace will join us live from the city of Abidjan. Those are the headlines this hour. You're watching France 24. Rescue workers in Turkey's third largest city, Izmir, are still searching the rubble for survivors after a strong earthquake in the Aegean Sea. At least 25 people were killed and over 800 injured, and delicate efforts to find survivors are being hampered by strong aftershocks. The Greek island of Samos was also affected, with two teenagers killed when a wall collapsed on them. Kamina Delek has the story.
Reaching out to safety, this elderly woman was saved from a collapsed building in Izmir. And within these layers upon layers of concrete, other survivors could well be waiting, trapped, as rescuers raced to find them, one day after an earthquake in the Aegean Sea rocked parts of Turkey and Greece. Most of the damage was centred on the Turkish town of Izmir. First responders had spent the night searching through the rubble, as worried family members watched on.
Kızım var burada. Kızım burada çalışıyordu diş polikliniğinde.
Almost 100 people have been rescued from wrecked buildings, and rescue workers also pulled out a cat. The 6.6 earthquake flattened several buildings, killing dozens of people and injuring hundreds more. Many families are too afraid to return to their homes, unsure if they are structurally sound, and so instead opted to sleep outside.
Yaşadığımız yer İzmir oldu. Yani biraz daha ılıman bir iklim. Yani bugünü kurtarırız, yarını kurtarırız ama uzun vadede de bizim de düşündüğümüz bir şey yok şu anda. Çaresiziz yani.
Two teenagers were also killed on the Greek island of Samos after a wall collapsed, and Friday's tremor triggered a small tsunami. Greece and Turkey are often at loggerheads, but the leaders exchanged words of support and solidarity in the wake of the disaster, standing united in the face of a common enemy.
Well, here in France, a third man has been arrested in connection with Thursday's attack on a church in Nice. The suspect, a Tunisian migrant who arrived in France via Italy, beheaded a woman and killed two others before he was shot and wounded by police. It was the second Islamist attack on French soil in less than 2 weeks. John-Emile Jamin has this report.
At the base of the Sacré-Cœur, police officers roam the pavements. Security here has been reinforced.
Alors ici, vous avez les effectifs qui sont traditionnellement des effectifs qui sont fidélisés sur le secteur. Et puis derrière, vous avez en appui les effectifs de renfort qui sont mis à notre disposition.
Following the Nice church attack on Thursday, France has raised the security threat to emergency attack. It's the highest level of the Vigipirat counter-terrorism plan and applies to the whole territory for a limited period of time to manage the crisis. Under the operation directive, soldier numbers are set to increase from 3,000 to 7,000 personnel, used to help guard at-risk establishments like places of worship and schools.
L'idée, c'est d'avoir un socle de sécurisation, c'est-à-dire des effectifs qui sont présents, qui sont visibles, qui rassurent, qui peuvent contrôler, qui peuvent intervenir s'il y a des événements suspects ou des personnes suspectes ou des colis abandonnés.
Their increased presence has already been felt by the faithful this morning.
Je pense que c'est normal que ces lieux soient protégés, bien sûr. Oui. C'est désolant d'en être là, mais c'est rassurant.
Je ne sais pas si 1 million de militaires suffirait vraiment à protéger chacune des, je crois, 40 000 églises qu'il y a en France. Donc c'est compliqué évidemment d'imaginer qu'on ait une solution définitive et parfaite contre ce genre de difficultés.
Another unique feature of this heightened security is that the citizens can be alerted by SMS or by televised broadcast messages, so as to prevent as many people as possible from coming under attack. It's the second time this level of emergency has been declared in France. The first one, after the attack on the Christmas market in Strasbourg in 2018, lasted 3 days.
So the French are on high alert for terrorism and also under lockdown to stop the spread of the coronavirus. France has one of the highest infection rates in Europe. All but essential journeys are banned for at least a month. People will need a written statement just to leave the house. This time around, though, schools will remain open. Selena Sykes has more detail.
Quiet, but not deserted. There was a sense of déjà vu in Paris on Friday as France entered its second lockdown, though the streets in the French capital were busier than during the spring. A relief for Parisians coming to terms with returning to life under lockdown.
Un peu perdu, mais dans l'ensemble, je trouve ça quand même beaucoup plus joyeux que la première fois. Il y a plus de monde dans les rues.
Déjà, ça semble différent, mais pour l'instant, je ne vois pas tellement de différence avec un autre jour, à part que les cafés sont fermés, mais c'est tout, quoi.
More passengers are expected on public transport than in the spring, as schools and workplaces remain open. Working from home, however, is strongly encouraged wherever possible. Unlike during the first lockdown, parks are staying open, though rules on outdoor exercise remain the same, a maximum duration of 1 hour and within 1 kilometre of people's homes.
C'est une bouffée d'oxygène quand même, on peut venir, il n'y a personne, on est dans la nature, il n'y a pas de monde, voilà, ça permet un petit peu de déstresser et de tenir, je pense, un petit peu mieux le confinement.
Though less harsh than the first time round, the new measures once again require people to fill out a form stating their reason for going out. Lockdown will last for at least a month. President Emmanuel Macron says he hopes the country can get back on its feet in time for Christmas.
Well, there are signs England could follow France into a full lockdown as coronavirus cases there continue to surge. England's reporting 52,000 new cases daily, and there are concerns hospitals could become overwhelmed. Millions of people in the northern regions are facing tougher restrictions from next week. The Prime Minister is expected to close everything except essential shops, schools and universities from Monday, with a full lockdown currently being discussed. Well, there's been a new record for coronavirus cases in the United States just 3 days before the election. 94,000 new infections were reported Friday, with more than 9 million cases nationally. In New York, one of the worst hit states, doctors say they are hopeful they can contain the second wave.
Lady Liberty in tears as coronavirus case numbers once again surge. This art installation at a New York church marks All Saints' Day, a traditional day of remembrance, particularly painful in 2020, with around 230,000 Americans dying in the pandemic. New York saw a 40% increase in the average number of daily new cases as compared to 2 weeks ago, and hospitals are bracing themselves.
We have T2, test and trace, we have contact tracing in place, we have way more testing, we'll get results way quicker. So I think we have some tools in our tool belt this time around to, control any sort of mini outbreaks.
Rural areas which escaped the worst of the first wave are being hit hard. Over a dozen states reported record case numbers on Friday, including North Dakota, which is so overrun that residents have been told to do their own contact tracing. Wisconsin has seen a 500% increase in cases in the past 2 months. Its hospitals are struggling to cope, and the state has opened a field hospital. And things are getting worse.
Hospitals in every region of our state are experiencing staffing strains, all while COVID-19 hospitalizations continue to rise.
Some epidemiologists say that colder, drier air makes it easier for the virus to circulate, compounded by the fact that people spend more time inside during the winter months.
Well, both President Trump and Joe Biden have been campaigning hard in those Midwestern states like Wisconsin, where coronavirus cases are surging and where voters could decide who is the next president. Emerald Maxwell has this report.
Honk your horn if you want to have civility again.
This is pandemic-era campaigning to respect social distancing rules. From Iowa to Minnesota to Wisconsin, Joe Biden crisscrossed 3 states in one day, in a part of the United States that could hold the key to the election. This industrial and rural region has also seen coronavirus cases dramatically spike. Biden was quick to remind people who he thinks is to blame.
This is the same man who weeks ago when he was told we're losing 1,000 lives a day, you remember what he said? He said, it is what it is. Donald Trump has waved the white flag and surrendered to this virus.
Not to be outdone, Donald Trump hit Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan the same day, dangling a promise to restore normal life, even as local hospitals reach capacity. The president was also quick to blame his opponent for the summer of violence in Wisconsin between anti-racist activists and far-right militias.
Biden and the far left incite violence with their vile anti-police rhetoric and the fact that they're weak people, very, very weak people. They allow rioters to lay waste to the public streets.
Joe Biden is determined not to make the same mistake as Hillary Clinton in 2016. She neglected to campaign in so-called blue wall states like Wisconsin, allowing Trump to narrowly clinch them.
Well, presidential elections are underway today in Ivory Coast. The incumbent, Alassane Ouattara, is seeking a third term in office, despite announcing earlier this year that he planned to step down. Well, there was violence in the run-up to the vote, with supporters and opponents clashing over the president's decision. At least 30 people were killed, and at least 2 of Ouattara's opponents have called on supporters to boycott the election. Well, for more, we can go now to Ivory Coast's main city, Abidjan. Our correspondent Sam Bradpeace is there. And Sam, are Ivorians turning out to vote, or are they heeding that call for a boycott?
Well, what we've seen today is that it seems like a large number of Ivorians are at least, yes, very much adhering to this call for a boycott. I had the Independent Electoral Commission on the phone earlier on. They explained that 7 out of 31 Ivorian regions have had difficulties when it comes to opening polling stations. This is because of roadblocks set up, we think, by the opposition, which have prevented people from travelling en masse to vote. It's worth remembering this election is important, not just for Ivory Coast, but also for the wider West African Francophone region. The Ivorian economy is one of the biggest in the region, and political stability here is also important when it comes to the fight against terrorism.
And remind us, Sam, why is Alassane Ouattara's decision to run again so controversial?
Alassane Ouattara's decision to run again is controversial because, well, mainly because the opposition and many legal experts consider his bid for a third term to be unconstitutional. The Ivorian constitution limits the presidency to just 2 terms. But Ouattara and the government have always defended his choice to run again, saying that because the constitution was reformed back in 2016, the term count should be reset to 0. Now, back in September, the country's constitutional court ruled that Ouattara's bid for a third term was fine from a legal standpoint. But the opposition, again, they're not very happy because they say the country's constitutional court is controlled by the president. Over half of the judges sitting in that body were appointed by Ouattara himself. So therein lies the issue. Just 10 years ago, Ivory Coast fell into a post-electoral crisis in which at least 3,000 people died. And so many people here, many Ivorians I've been speaking with, are very worried about a repeat or a return to those dark days of the past.
Sam, thank you very much. Sam Bradpeace there reporting from Abidjan in Ivory Coast. Now, tens of thousands of people, many of them wearing rainbow-coloured face masks, have been marching through Taiwan's main city for the annual Gay Pride event. Last year, Taiwan became the first country in Asia to legalise same-sex marriage, and this week 2 women became the first Taiwanese military officers to marry their partners. Well, the island has another reason to celebrate. It's managed to stamp out the coronavirus pandemic. Taiwan recorded just over 500 infections in all and just 7 deaths, thanks to an early and effective response by the government. That included mandatory tests on visitors from China. Well, that's it from the newsroom this hour. For more coverage of any of the stories you've seen covered here, do go to our website, france24.com, and we'll be back shortly with another update.